The effects of the war in Iran are rippling around the globe. We're going to be talking today with Barak Ravid, Axios Global Affairs correspondent, who behind the scenes talks to top U.S. officials, top Israeli officials, officials around the world. One of the most trusted, best connected reporters there is. Here's Barak. Barak, your behind-the-scenes reporting has been amazing. I'm going to start with a very simple question. Why did President Trump take America to war? The reason I ask is that he hasn't always answered that question plainly. Why hasn't this war been explained more clearly?
I think one of the reasons that it wasn't explained more clearly is that I think that until the last minute or the last day, they weren't sure if they're really going to go to war. All the military planning was there, all the assets were in place, everything was ready. But from the point that he made the decision, I don't think there was enough time to really give the case to the American people. Trump started doing this in the State of the Union. Okay, if you read the State of the Union, even though the Iran part was, not very detailed, he gave all the reasons for why he's going to war with Iran.
For decades, it had been the policy of the United States never to allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. Many decades. Since they seized control of that proud nation 47 years ago, the regime and its murderous proxies have spread nothing but terrorism and death and hate. They've killed and maimed thousands of American service members and hundreds of thousands and even millions of people. My preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy. But one thing is certain, I will never allow the world's #1 sponsor of terror, which they are by far, to have a nuclear weapon. Can't let that happen.
Barak, you told me that day, we were debating, why was it tucked in like that? And you said, no, this is the clearest he's ever been.
Yeah, he just gave the details. Again, with Donald Trump, it's very, the way his style. Okay, his styles, people sometimes focus on his style and don't listen to actually what did he just say? And I think, how much, and I when we wrote the story about this, our headline was Trump presented the case for war with Iran. And the pushback I got, including from people in the White House, who said, no, he didn't present the case for war. I said, what are you talking about? That's it. If I needed to guess what's going to happen, it was enough to listen to the State of the Union to understand he is starting to prepare the public.
We just saw a briefing at the Pentagon, top military officials, confident at the very least, you could say even bravado. Secretary of Defense Hegseth said the terms of this war will be set by us at every step. You have these behind-the-scenes conversations. To what degree does that confidence reflect how they really think and how they are behind the scenes? Or is there more trepidation when they're off camera?
No, so I think there's confidence, but also, you can see the difference between the way Hegseth talks and the way that, the military people talk. They're
much more measured on the military side.
Measured, and I think, I don't want to say realistic, but more cognizant of the fact that you can't really predict what's going to happen tomorrow, and that wars can very easily get much more complicated and take a turns and a twist. So, when Hegseth says we're winning and we will outlast the Iranians, I think that's a very important statement, because it encapsulates what this war is about. The victory for Iran will be if they are still standing after Israel and the U.S. Finish their operation. If the regime still stands, Iran won. That's it. They don't need to do anything else other than stay alive. That's their advantage, because, it's an asymmetric war. For Israel and the U.S., A victory means, in reality, at this point, even though the US doesn't say that one of the goals is regime change, in reality, if the regime stays, then Israel and the US lost. So for the US and Israel to win, it needs to be clear that the regime either collapsed or that whoever is in charge is, is there as a sort of a US puppet like Delcy Rodriguez in Venezuela. If that's not the case, then the Iranians will declare victory. It's very clear to me. They only want to, they are ready to take a lot of casualties, to get many of their commanders killed, eliminated. They are ready to get all of their military destroyed, all of their infrastructure destroyed. But if there is one member of the regime who will stand at the end of the war and say, "We're still here. This system still holds the Iranian state." Okay, if that's the case, they won. This is why it's so tricky.
Even for an astute news consumer, it's so hard to know what's real. Barak, how do you sort personally what's real and what can a viewer do?
I ask this question myself every day. It is very, very hard. A few days ago, there was a photo going around, an alleged photo of Khamenei under the rubble, Khamenei's body under the rubble in his compound. It was AI generated, but I gotta tell you, it really looked real. Okay, and so I think this is a big question, and there's a lot of disinformation, misinformation. Uh, Donald Trump, for example, on Friday, he said on Friday after he already gave the order. He already gave the order, and he went. He talked to reporters and said, "I haven't made the decision yet, but I'm very unhappy with the Iranians. They haven't negotiated in good faith, but I haven't made a decision." He already made a decision. So when we wrote that story, I had a real dilemma on like, how do you write it in a way that, on the one hand, you need to report what the president said, but you are cognizant of the fact that this could all be deception. So one of the things we realized that we have to say in the headline that Trump frustrated with Iran, but claims he did not take a decision yet. Because there was no other way to present it other than to say that's what the guy claims. We don't know if that's what's really happening. The State Department put out a statement on, I can't remember if it was Thursday or Friday, that Rubio is planning to go to Israel on Monday. Okay?
You told me at the time there's no way he's doing
Exactly. And you know how I knew? Because it was reported in one of the US media outlets that Israeli officials say that they're making intense preparations.
Yeah, that made you suspicious. I called you and asked you about that, and you instantly said they protest too much.
Yeah, I mean, what intense preparations can you do? What, you vacuum the red carpet? What are they? What do you need to do? It's the Secretary of State. And it was very clear at that time that those things are, they tried a bit too much.
Barak, as we say goodbye to take our viewers behind the scenes, Saturday, the day of the strikes, afternoon, you just did a hit on CNN with Caitlin Collins. You got done with your CNN hit. You picked up your phone, and then what happened?
Yeah. So I called Donald Trump, I called the president, and I tried reaching him several times that morning, and I couldn't. And then I tried again at, close just several minutes before 1 p.m. And this time he took the call, and he said that he just watched me on CNN. So I think that was a good icebreaker. Um, and we spoke for something like 5 minutes, and he was very, I think, satisfied with what has been achieved. It was like few hours after the war started. I think he felt that it started in a good way. The opening strike was successful, and he was confident about the way forward, and basically laid out two scenarios that I think are still relevant. And those scenarios were on the one hand, he said, I can go long and take over the whole thing, meaning, you know, a military campaign of several weeks or several months that end with the U.S. Effectively with in control of Iran, even if not with boots on the ground, but in effective control after the regime collapses or something like that. Or the there are several days of an air campaign, and the U.S. decides we think we basically got our objectives, and now we tell the Iranians, well, um, if you want a deal, let's do one on our terms. And if not, don't rebuild everything we destroyed. And if you do rebuild it, we'll be back. And I think those two options are sort of still on the table. And, Donald Trump always likes to Donald Trump always likes to keep options open and decide in the last minute. One of the reasons he does it is that it throws off his adversaries. It's like that in politics. It's like that in peace. It's like that in war. That's how the guy operates. He floods the zone. He gives contradictory messages. His adversaries don't know what to think anymore. And then the last minute, he decides which direction he wants to go. We saw that again this time. He waited until 11 hours before the strikes to basically decide that, all right, we're doing it.
Barak Ravid, thank you for your consequential pace-setting reporting.
Thank you, Mike.